His party lost the election, turned that nomination down, appointed Deputy Prime Minister, ran for an election for President, lost it, stayed out for 5 years, and he reinvented himself and formed a coalition which also lost the election. And now he is playing the de facto opposition leader after the top two opposition chiefs took government jobs. He says someone must serve in that capacity, but is he up to the task? Later, his reflection on an artistic impression on Toonside and on Timber, we take you back 30 years ago when my guest was first elected to Parliament. It's one-on-one on Sidebar tonight. But first, my take. Now tonight, it's our desire to add our voice to the ongoing conversation around students behaving badly, or were they just becoming students? Now the two incidences, that's in Ambira High School, where the school leavers have shocked the nation in the past few days. The first was an online video of evidentially of intoxicated Ambira High School students in Siaya County who publicly declared they had cheated in the ongoing Kenya Certificate of Secondary School examination and insulted public officers with the foul list of language that depicts a lot of uncouth and insolent youngsters. Second was the incident in Bomet where a group of high school leavers were caught preparing for a sex orgy party. On the surface, this explicitly demonstrates the levels of indiscipline and rot in our schools. It is such perverted thinking that explains the runaway cases of school strikes where students resort to violence and chaos to show defiance to organized society where law and order must be paramount. Now, the case of Ambira High School, for example, was particularly calling as the students had the temerity not just to boast of committing the crime, but also record themselves and broadcast it to the whole world. Now, this is the height of juvenile delinquency, complete disrespect and utter recklessness. But underneath such lunacy, there are fundamental issues that the society must confront. The first is the education system is not achieving the desired goal of nurturing upright and morally stable individuals. Tied to this is the rogueness and the highly competitive education system and inherent biases that creates a siege mentality and elicits strong detestation from the learners. We have created a monster in the name of providing education, and learners go through the process as a routine, but without conviction about its relevance in their lives. In itself, there is a strong learning point for the curricular developers and implementers of as well as policymakers. We have to revisit the philosophy, conceptualization and modeling of education to create a system that truly nurtures learners rather than forcing them to cram and regurgitate facts which make them hate the learning altogether. Oftentimes, we fulminate when youngsters misbehave, but we hardly reflect and determine the underlying causes. We have reflected or perfected the disorder and chaos in all spheres of public life. Politicians are notorious for publicly abusing each other and perceived enemies. Top officials, that's public officers, routinely are caught stealing or engaging in extremely unethical practices. Parents long ceded their responsibility and lost authority over their children. Many businesses thrive on stealing and cheating. So as we condemn the rogue learners, we must also confront the question of indiscipline in the society in general. All those unruly students must be dealt with thoroughly and made to understand that there are laws and regulations that guide the society. They must be punished to serve as a warning to others. Even so, it's equally important that the society introspects and determines the value system it inculcates in the youngsters. As Malcolm X puts it, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. My guest tonight, Musalia Mudavadi, Amani National Congress Party leader. My name is Ken Mijungu. Join the conversation. The hashtag is Sidebar. Twitters at NTV Kenya at Ken Mijungu. SMS feedback line is 20686. Sidebar one-on-one begins right now.
Ukiwa opposition, kwani siku moja hawezi kuwa rais? Tutaweza kuwa? Kwa nini watu wanaogopa kuwa kwa opposition? Ukiangalia historia ya Kenya, Moi alikuwa kwa opposition, baadaye ndio akakuja akakuwa rais. Kibaki alikuwa kwa opposition, na baadaye akakuja akawa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Hata ndugu yetu mkubwa, ndugu ya Wamalwa, alikuwa kwa opposition, akakuja akawa deputy president wa Jamhuri ya Kenya wakiwa na Kibaki, na alitoka opposition. Uhuru Kenyatta alikuwa mkubwa wa opposition KANU, ametoka huko amekuwa president of Kenya. Sasa mimi Musalia nikibaki huko kwa opposition, nani anasema siwezi kuja kuwa rais na hawa jamaa wote walipitia kwa opposition?
All right, Musalia Mudavadi is everything, but certainly not what we are getting accustomed to. A viewer described you on Twitter when we posted that you're coming in studio as very bold, and my panel yesterday, made of members of parliament, current and former, said that you are in the right path, and they said you should not relent. My question is this you, or is it the new you? Has it been you, or this is the new you right now?
Well, first of all, good evening, Ken. It is me. This is me. And I have always spoken to some of these issues, and I think people are beginning to listen. Previously, maybe they were not listening for whatever reason, but I can tell you that I observe very carefully, I reflect on issues, and I pronounce myself on those issues. So what I am doing, I've always done, but I intend to become more robust.
Oh, more robust. Could that also mean more bold and more assertive in how you do stuff?
Yes, I think assertive is the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
And bold?
And bold.
Okay.
I've always, by the way, I've always been courageous. I tackle issues in manners that people may never have understood before.
Okay.
So I can tell you very clearly that I am very firm in tackling the issues and in addressing issues that I believe ought to be addressed.
Okay, bold and assertive. Let's talk about what you've been speaking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes.
The donation in church. What is the problem? What problem do you have with the donations that are going on in churches?
Oh, this is a very interesting thing, because I think I've come out to speak and say something that many people believe is going on, but they're scared of speaking to it because they believe they might offend the church, or they believe they might offend the very philanthropic individuals who are moving around. But the truth is this, and I keep on saying it, the doors of the church must be wide open. They must allow people to come and make their donations if they want to.
Yes.
Nobody says that they should not. But I think the message I was putting across is this. The church and other religious entities are actually the moral compass of our society. And in the Bible, there are very specific areas. I think in the book of Romans, for instance, the church should not, be overrun by worldly issues. So if we want to build a proper society, and you've just started talking about, I was listening to you, you talk about the young children.
The students.
The students,
yes,
who seem to have gone wayward ways. They cannot be going that way, and various institutions are quiet. The church has got to speak to it and start, just as much as parents are responsible, but the church, as the moral compass of our society, must stand out clearly. Now, let me just give you an example. Where I come from, this is, I don't know how best I can put it, but this, where I come from in Western Kenya, one of the delicacies is chicken. So here I am, a parent. My son comes of age, or my daughter. So she gets a job. So the first thing I hear is, "Hi, I've come to visit you." And she delivers some chicken for dinner on a special occasion. I say, thank God, that is good, it's a blessing. Next time the child comes with a goat, I say, I think then maybe you have gotten a promotion now that you brought me a goat. The next time the child comes and delivers a bull, and I say, wow, you must have either been promoted tremendously or you've started some serious ranching business. So we give them the benefit of doubt. But surely, if the child comes and delivers an elephant, you must ask the child, when did you become a poacher? So this is the basic fundamental principle.
And you think the church is not interrogating this at all?
The church has not been interrogating this.
Okay.
And in the process, we are all now contributing to the negative values that are beginning to catch up with our children.
Okay. And of course, you have made this statement in church itself. You don't fear the repercussion of talking about this in church? Next time you'll not get invited to any church.
The truth sets you free. After all, why do you go to the church? You go to the church because you believe in the truth. And the truth is important. And the church will support what is true.
Okay.
So, as far as I'm concerned, I should not fear to speak to these issues. Okay. Now, we are, running away from very important things. Today, let's face it, if you go to any bank, there is the issue of know your customer. You will not open a bank account without them trying to establish who you are and what you do. Okay? We have also seen that if you went to a bank and you wanted to withdraw $1 million shillings in cash, you will have to sign off a form explaining what the money, the purpose of the money is. This is a requirement today. So you tell me, if I go and I start pulling out in batches of 10 million, 5 million, 20 million in cash.
Where are the questions? Who is raising the questions?
Who is raising the questions?
So when you talk about 10 million, 8 million in cash, 2 million in cash, are you looking at all the politicians, or you are targeting a particular politician in this country?
It's all of us.
Okay.
I've never mentioned anybody's name, have I?
But why haven't you mentioned anyone's name?
Because I'm very careful that you don't want to just be seen to be personalizing a very
But you're a bold person. You just told me you're a bold person.
Yes, a bold person.
Yes,
a bold person. But you don't have to mention names just for the sake of mentioning. It's the principle that I'm talking to. I'm talking to the issue that Kenyans need to address.
Okay.
All right? So if it is me doing that, I think it is important that somebody raises it with me or raises it publicly so that I can reform.
Why do I have the feeling that you're afraid to mention this person who's dishing out money? Because the other side is mentioning you, specifically for singling him out.
I have never mentioned somebody's name.
You've never, and that's why we're wondering, why didn't you mention the name?
This is when you say the guilty are afraid, because I've never mentioned somebody's name. You've heard of this famous story that when you start talking about bonds, the elderly people start getting worried, So if somebody somewhere is getting jittery because I'm talking about corruption and saying that this is not good for our society, then that person should carry his own cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your SGO is sitting right there, and he mentioned and say, if the cup fits, you don't it. But I'm still going to ask you, are you going to mention the name of this politician, particular politician that is running around and dishing money in churches and building schools?
I think Kenyans are very, very observant. They can see for themselves. They observe us daily as politicians. So I will leave that to them. But at an appropriate time, if need be, I would do it.
So the tag of being bold,
it's always there.
It's always there, but you can't mention the name.
No. There's a question of also being wise in the process.
Okay.
Yes.
However, it seems the other side think you should not be mentioning the names. Let's play this soundbite and listen to it first, then we get back to you.
Nimejipanga na kanisa kwa sababu siwezi kuwa hasla hapa duniani alafu niende nikuwe hasla tena mbinguni. Hapana, hiyo haiwezekani.
Nani alikuwa kwingine, sijui alitoa ngapi, lakini ananunguna eti tunatoa pesa mingi kanisani na anauliza tunazitoa wapi. Anasema kwa magazeti, kwa mitandao, anasema huyu pesa anatoa ni kuiba, ameiba. Mimi nimeuliza, sitaki kusema ile duala aliuliza imeibiwa ya nani.
Kama sisi atuulizi yeye akipelekea pesa yake breweries, mbona anauliza Deputy President maswali akikuja kujenga kanisa ya Mungu?
Amongst the richest Kenyans in this country, you're not the richest Kenyan. Wewe si ule tajiri mkubwa ndani ya nchi. Kwa hivyo, kama matajiri wengi wako na pesa na wameamua kukalia, wasitafute jinsi ya kunyang'anya na kukataza ambao wanataka kusaidia kanisa. Wakipeleka mtu wakijenga nyumba South Africa, mwingine anunue ile kitu ananunua, vile wewe ulivyosema, Usikue hasla hapa nyumbani na ukue hasla binguni, ama namna gani?
Watu wengi wanasumbuliwa na ile kazi mimi ninafanya ya maendeleo ya taifa letu la Kenya, ya kujenga makanisa na kufanya yale mambo mengine, lakini mimi nataka niwaeleze watulie, wawache maneno mingi. Hakuna haraka, hakuna shida, kila mtu afanye kazi yake, na hakuna haja ya kusumbuliwa na mambo ya 2022. 2022 itakuja na itapita.
We began by saying that you tackle the bull by the horns. You mentioned, you talk about what other people do not want to talk about. And essentially they are referring to the people who are talking about their donation. And explicitly, his surrogates, the deputy president's surrogates, are attacking you and mentioning you by name. How does that make you feel? Because I believe you are on a trajectory with this.
I think all it says that it means that some people believe I'm touching a raw nerve. That is the message that I can get out of this. And frankly speaking, you know, there are some statements that are very interesting. If you look at a dictionary, I wish we had one here, but if you look at a dictionary and you ask yourself, what is the meaning of the word hustler? And then you say, I want to stop being a hustler here.
I can't be a hustler here.
Be a hustler here,
and
then again be a hustler in heaven.
Yes.
But if you look at the full meaning of the word hustler, I don't think is it a confession? Because the way I understand the word hustler, I don't think it's something that you really want to be associated with.
Okay.
So is somebody confessing to some issues?
Okay. Okay. So,
but in any case,
yes.
Let's go further. A statement like that also seems to indicate that you are trying to buy your way to heaven.
You're investing in heaven. It's in the Bible.
You're trying to... in the Bible, do you invest with monetary?
Even in action, just several things.
Precisely. I think the point here is that whoever advised the deputy president on that statement, I think may have given him a very different... a very wrong piece of advice, because the negative interpretation here, and I think it's the simple interpretation, is that you are trying to find a way to heaven in a manner that is different.
Do you do donations back in Western Kenya?
Of course I do.
Yes.
Of course I do.
What is the difference with what you do and what these politicians do?
I think what is important is that you give what you can. It's not the equality or the quantity of the gift. Okay?
Yes.
It is the quality of the sacrifice you're making. Now, I don't know whether we have reached in Kenya where you want to measure the quality of sacrifice on the basis of how much you're donating.
God loves a cheerful giver.
What about the same Bible that talks of how he appreciated the lady
with the little she had.
With the little she had.
Yes.
Yeah. Why aren't we talking about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. To end this, I'd like to ask you a question that has featured also in a discussion with members of parliament here.
Yes.
The fact that a top government official is going around the country and doing these developments, what does that say of the kind of environment they've created for the people? Because for you to need, it means you lack. So filling that void.
I think what it means is that there's been a lot of wastage. Let's just now move away from the church.
Yes.
There's been a lot of wastage and there's been a lot of pilferage. And we have to do something about it. It seems a lot of resources that are due and are supposed to go into development are not reaching the targeted areas. And this is why there's this sudden urge, all of a sudden, and sudden haste that people must go back to fundraisings. And this will in turn put pressure on individuals, particularly those in public office, to start trying to figure out how they can raise money through unorthodox methods to try and meet these commitments around Harambee.
Okay. I'll be talking about corruption later and what's happening in the country with the domestic or public debt. I want to talk about politics now, and I want to talk about NASA specifically.
Right.
Is NASA dead?
No, NASA is not dead. NASA is not dead because we have a coalition agreement. And inside the coalition agreement, which is registered with the register of political parties. We are very specific that 3 political parties need to exit formally for NASA to be pronounced dead. As I speak to you now, and as I speak to the nation, none of the 4 principal parties in NASA have withdrawn.
Formally?
Formally. None. All right? But what I admit is that NASA has been facing challenges and continues to face challenges. And these are the challenges that we ought to deal with. Okay? We have a situation where we have to rebuild confidence within NASA. We have issues where we have to deal with issues of trust amongst ourselves and our members. These are issues that are on the table and they'll have to be dealt with.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did this crisis begin? When did this lack of confidence begin in NASA? Is it during the swearing in of Raila Odinga?
I think that is history, really. When people don't consult appropriately during certain circumstances, then naturally cracks would start appearing. Okay? So I don't want at this point in time to say that I'm blaming any particular individual on this. I think NASA collectively, the members and indeed even the principals of NASA collectively share some measure of blame on what has befallen NASA today.
Okay. So when you say it's history, my interest is not in the history of the swearing in, but what could have happened before the swearing in. There are reports that the team that did not go to Uhuru Park were threatened by foreign embassies.
Oh my God. Who threatened them?
Like blacklisting, withdrawal of visas.
No, it's not about
charges of treason.
It's not about threatening. I think what becomes clear is that you do what is right. And I've stated before, I think even I stated it here, that we must believe in constitutionalism. We as NASA must work on the basis of what the law provides. Countries are free to make their decisions, but the reality of the matter is that if we engage in a process, and this I can tell you for free, if I or anybody else engages in a process that is seen to be unconstitutional in trying to get to power, you will not only lose friends within the country, but you will also lose friends outside the country, particularly those who believe in constitutionalism. So as far as I'm concerned, I can tell you that our position was very clear, and it remained very clear then, that NASA principals were a constellation of people with a high profile. Raila was a former prime minister. I was a former deputy prime minister, also a former vice president. Kalonzo was a former vice president and foreign minister. Wetangula was a former foreign affairs minister. Yes. So clearly, we are people who have been exposed globally and internationally. And therefore, it must be known to everybody that anything that you do, particularly if you are in the game of politics, let it be within the framework of the Constitution.
Okay, as you say that, thinking from the top of my mind at that time that a lot of sentiments that went around that is that, apart from the explanation that you're giving, is that you chickened from the process.
No.
That's the narrative that has been driven.
Yes.
Yes.
But I want to tell you that it's rubbish. It is rubbish.
Okay.
Yeah. It is absolutely rubbish. Let us learn to follow the law.
Okay.
We cannot be talking of our children out there misbehaving in Ambira and in Bomet. And then we, as leaders, want to conduct ourselves in a constitutional process.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't have our cake and eat it as leaders.
You are the NASA principal who announced Raila Odinga as president and said you will do anything to ensure he ascends to power.
That was during the campaign.
No, that was after the vote.
That when we were disputing the results.
Yes, when we were disputing the results, yes.
And we did. Indeed, as a nation, we did.
Was that constitutional?
We went to the Supreme Court, didn't we? Didn't we file a petition?
You did. And you won the
NASA.
petition.
Yes,
Yes.
we filed a petition. Wasn't that constitutional?
And an election, a re-election was ordered for the presidential
Yes, which
candidate.
which then we did not participate in.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
But in terms of what is constitutional, and when I said we shall do everything possible, yes, I said it. And we did what was possible.
Which
and
is going to court.
And what was in accordance with the law. And we went to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Yeah, which judged in our favor.
But at the time you're making the declaration,
Yes.
Uhuru Kenyatta was ahead. He had already been announced a president, right? Elect. But you still made the announcement.
But after I made the statement,
Yes.
it's because I believed that we had
Won the election.
And I believed that the election process had been flawed by the IEBC. So I made that decision at that point, or that pronouncement at that point in time. But subsequent to that, we followed the law.
With hindsight, what happened and the accusations that have been flying around about you chickening, not going for the swearing in, yet you were the one who led the presidential campaign, you coined the tribune and all that. With hindsight, do you think you'd have done something different? Do you think you'd have taken a contrary decision?
No.
Perhaps to go to Uhuru Park?
No, I don't think I'd have taken a contrary decision because the fidelity to the law is important, Ken.
Okay.
And if we want to consolidate democracy in this country, and we want to be able to also generate investor confidence and people believing in our systems, we must abide by the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka have been appointed, and you have declined an appointment, or you have said you've not been appointed, but you've said that you don't want an appointment in the government. What does that make you in the coalition, in NASA?
Well, first of all, let me state here that I don't begrudge my brothers taking up any assignment. And indeed, I have congratulated both of them, the Honorable Raila and the Honorable Kalonzo, for the assignments that they have. And I believe they will offer something for this country, and they'll offer something to the African continent. So it is important we appreciate that. And I wish them well as they proceed with the assignments. Now, the point I've been trying to make here is that what defines government jobs? I believe government jobs are defined, or at least come across, when you have had an election and you're competing. So there are those who win the election and then are mandated to form government. And there are those who lose the election and their job shall become the opposition. So the straight position here is that the Jubilee government was given the mandate. Whether we may have issues around it or not, the fact of the matter is that the Jubilee government is the one that is in power. So we have to appreciate that for government jobs, their first call of port is really those people who supported Jubilee. We were going into the election to form government. So we must also portray ourselves as a government in waiting. Okay? And to portray ourselves as a government in waiting, we must play our role effectively in checking the government. In checking the government. Yeah. And that's the job I'm doing at this point in time. That's the job I'm doing. Now, you ask whether I've turned down an offer. First of all, there's no offer that has come to me. But I have stated way before, and I stand by it, that I don't believe that we deserve, or I deserve, to be in government. Okay? We were competing against the Jubilee government. They have their mandate. Once you take up a government job, my friend, you're in it. You're gagged, and you are in it. Under the principle of collective responsibility, we would not be able to discuss issues here, because you would be looking at it and saying, will I breach the principle of collective responsibility? So I don't want to be gagged. I want to be able to express myself and to speak to citizens' issues and the country's issues. And where the government has done well, I'll commend it. I'll not shy away from saying so. And where it is slipping, I will also point it out.
Okay. But in this role, you have not been proactive about it. You're only coming to take up this role after Raila Odinga was appointed to the African Union Commission. You have not been proactive about being the opposition leader. Suddenly you are.
My friend, when I supported Raila, I supported him with a lot of zeal. Please bear that in mind. Not only in the last election, but also in 2007, 2008, I supported him with a lot of zeal. As my friend Gideon would put it, kwa hali na mali. Gideon Moi. So I supported him. And I respected the protocols in NASA. For the period that Raila was our presidential candidate and we had given him the mandate, he was literally the principal spokesman for NASA on that basis. And therefore, out of the protocols that I understand, we gave him the latitude to speak in accordance with our understanding. And I was his chief campaigner. But we gave him that latitude. Now, if, on the other hand, we've reached a stage, the stage that we are in now, that perhaps because of his other assignments, he can no longer handle the situation, political situation, as he was doing it before, then I must also send a signal to our supporters throughout the country that NASA is not dead.
But
that's the message.
A message that has been repeated. I still like to pursue this line of questioning because I still have a lot to ask you about it. But as we take a break, talk to me about the attitude or the culture of winner takes it all in this country. Is it time we reviewed this? So that we become more accommodative, so that we don't have...
The truth is, we have said it before, and even in our coalition agreement, by the way, the NASA coalition agreement, which we all appended a signature to, one of the issues we were to pursue had we formed a government was to institute an all-inclusive review process of some clauses or some chapters of the Constitution. And one of them was the governance structure, to broaden it and make it more inclusive. So that is something we appended a signature to.
Okay.
So to answer your question, nobody should doubt whatsoever that we support a winner-take-all situation. I think the diversity of this country is such that it is important to have an all-inclusive outfit. Other than that, I also want it to be understood that we would not be looking at an amendment purely to give people positions based on ethnic mathematics and so forth. Let's move away from that. I would rather we focused on it through discussion, but to create a more accountable government.
Okay.
More accountable. For instance, today, cabinet secretaries, when they are called before parliamentary committees, you see very strange things. Some of them move in as if they are lecturers entering a lecture hall, and they lecture those committees rather than trying to respond to the questions that are required appropriately. So you ask yourself, is this good for accountability or not? So these are some of the areas that I would say we'd want to look at, and there could be others which perhaps in the course of the discussion I can also highlight.
Yeah, because I'm confused about your way of looking at inclusiveness and what's happening currently in the country, because that could also be translated as being inclusive, as not living, because you can imagine what would have happened in the country if there was no handshake, for example. probably will not be talking about this today here. There will be something else in this country. So I would want to understand the inclusivity, but based on what's happening currently, if you think it's inclusivity or it's just rewarding a few people who are ready to work with the government.
Please let's also try and understand the handshake. Every other day I keep on trying to understand it even better. It has, and I've stated before, it has brought in a semblance of tranquility, okay? Or it has indeed lowered the political temperatures in the country. But the handshake is not a solution in itself. And my friend, what did it signify? Did it signify that it was a burying of a hatchet between two individuals? Is that what it was supposed to signify? Or is it supposed to be a bigger symbolism, carry bigger symbolism that the country needs to pull together and we should all be involved in an inclusive process? I think the authors of the handshake have got a very big challenge, and that challenge is to persuade Kenyans that the handshake is not about two people.
Okay. Right. Time to take a break. We will come back. We still have a lot to discuss with you. We want to talk still about the opposition. We want to talk about your pet subject, the public debt also. And we want to talk about your ambition for 2022 and where you stand currently. But first, let's take a look if there is some feedback. Right, on Twitter, Kigen says it's not the first time that Musalia Mudavadi has refused an appointment by the Jubilee government. He is on record saying he refused an appointment following the 2013 election. His moral bar appears to be high. That's focus. That's Kigen. Right. Walemo Busuku says, I would wish to ask Musalia Mudavadi if he has been offered any job by the government and decided to lead the opposition. You've answered that you've not been offered. Let's take a look at the last. All right, that's the last one. We will be looking at some more feedback when we come back. But first, let's take a break. We'll be back.
ile kitu yenye ulisikia Mheshimiwa Mudavadi akisema he cannot work with Ruto because Ruto is a competitor. Mheshimiwa ndugu yangu Mudavadi, hiyo ni kweli. Ruto is your competitor. But if you want to grow to the next level, mpaka ufanye alliance with a strong competitor, yeye awe rais na wewe uwe makamu ya rais. Kama unafikiri utakuja mbele ya Wakenya uwaletee running mate kama Jeremiah ya Kioni, hakuna mtu atakuchukua seriously.
This one talks to the politics of Western Kenya. Would you work with Deputy President William Ruto?
I've stated very clearly I'm a competitor. We can remain friends, but he's a competitor. So on what basis would we be saying let us work together? If it is the question of 2022, we cannot, because he's looking for the seat and I am looking for the seat. So let this be very clear.
That you cannot work with William Ruto?
Not on this one.
But
Not on this competition of 2022. No.
In 2013, you ran,
yes,
right,
I
for
did.
president.
Yes.
You did not support Raila Odinga.
Yes.
But in 2017, you supported Raila Odinga.
Yes, that was a different time, different circumstance. Okay? But here I'm being very categorical that it's not on.
Times change.
I am telling the Kenyan people I'll be offering myself to you at the appropriate time in accordance with our constitution so that I can have the opportunity to serve the Kenyan people. So I'm very clear on that.
Okay. A lot of your sentiments have always had a tone of you are ready to lead the opposition without Raila and Kalonzo. It looks to me like you are ready, you're waiting for something to push you to do that.
I'm already doing it, my friend. I'm already speaking to issues and playing the role and articulating the issues that need to be dealt with from the position of an opposition personality, an opposition leader. So I'm speaking to the issues. So I'm not waiting for anything to give.
Okay.
I'm not waiting for anything to move. I think I've been very categorical in what I've been addressing in the last few days, whether it be the public debt, which we shall talk about, as you said,
yes,
or whether it will be issues relating to corruption, the mistreatment of maize farmers, the mistreatment of sugarcane farmers. All these issues are on the table, and I've been addressing those particular issues. And I don't know whether this is the time for us to highlight some of them. Or do you want us to?
No, we'll highlight them. We'll highlight them.
So
I'm still on that because
yes.
Probably now that Raila Odinga and Kalonzo are gone, you're waiting for them to say, now you are the one who's remaining, now take over the mantle of the opposition leader. Be speaking about what I should be speaking about.
No, I'm not waiting for them to say anything.
Okay.
All right, let's be very clear on this. I'm not expecting them to say anything about the opposition politics in this context. All I'm saying is that I'm already playing my role as the opposition leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question then is, do you have what it takes to be the opposition leader? And top of my mind is how Raila Odinga has led the opposition in this country. Do you have the trust of Kenyans to believe what you're going to talk about?
I don't know whether there's a script that is cast in concrete on what an opposition leader should look like, or what an opposition leader should behave like, or how an opposition leader should behave, what gait he should carry, and so forth. I don't think there's such a script. So we must debunk this notion that an opposition is about an individual. Let us look at the opposition as an institution, an important component of our democracy and our constitution. The way you expect government to work on issues collectively, I think it is also important that the institution of opposition be seen to be checking the excesses of government and also offering alternative policy positions.
Okay.
So that is what I am doing, and that is what I intend to do. And I want to invite other Kenyans to be part of it.
Okay.
There's been a notion here that opposition must be defined by picketing. Opposition must be defined by some form of violence. Opposition must reflect a certain degree of impunity. This is the notion, this is the straitjacket in which we have put opposition, and I think we owe it to the Kenyans to tell them that that has been the wrong perception of what opposition is. If I'm preparing myself to be an alternative government, why should I scare investors by destroying properties, by smashing windows, and then you say you're a government that wants to attract investment? We have to start being serious if we want to change the attitude of this country. And I think it will help that we do that. I know picketing may be allowed within the Constitution and so forth, but there are times for those kind of things. But as we speak now, unemployment is running high. People are under pressure. The cost of living is too high. I don't think, even businesses are struggling. You just have to look at the newspapers and see how many are being auctioned every other week. 8 pages of advertisement in our local dailies, or 10. This tells you that people are struggling.
Okay.
This is not the right time to start telling people we want to start destroying property, or we want to start picketing, and then you get out of control. No.
But do you think even if you wanted, Kenyans would follow? Even if you wanted to call Kenyans to the streets, they will follow you?
It's not about following me.
Yes.
Kenyans don't protest because of the individual.
No, but they understand what an individual says.
No. If there was a reason for a protest march, it should be on an issue. It should be issue-based. We should not fall into the trap. I mean, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta once said, even if you think you're what, and he told you go and stand on Hilton Hotel, which was the tallest building then, and jump to the ground, and you don't have a parachute, will you jump? So there are some things here that we must be very clear about as a nation. And in this context, let us redefine
what opposition is.
Redefine opposition politics in this country.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you would raise an issue in this country right now, say for example at NHIF right now, do you think Kenyans will take you seriously? As an alternative voice?
I would say they've been taking me seriously. I can tell you that. There are so many Kenyans out there who are listening to the issues I'm talking about, and they're taking me seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that takes me to you fitting probably in the shoes of Raila Odinga as the opposition now that you have taken over that role, as you said, right? What is your kind of relationship with Raila right now?
By the way, we are not enemies at all. We've never been enemies. We are friends.
We talk regularly?
We even share the gym. I don't know whether that helps in debunking this notion that differences of opinion means that there's enmity. No. We may have different views, different approaches to the politics of the day, but we are not enemies.
Okay. What did you say about his nature of politics, Raila Odinga? You've talked about how he's led the opposition and what has characterized the opposition.
What I don't know is that I don't know whether it is fair for me to...
no, but you've just talked about how the opposition has been handling...
To spend too much time discussing my friend Raila, because there are some issues that he's best placed to respond to. All I can say at this stage is that everybody has got his own style and approach. Okay? Sometimes his style can achieve certain objectives. Sometimes my style will achieve the desired objectives also. So let us respect each other in that scope.
Okay. So one of the things that has bedeviled NASA is lack of communication, even within party structures. How does your party speak to issues, for example, ANC, when you want to address issues that deals with the coalition? I had Boni Halwale today at SLCMU. They said there was a national executive committee that manages NASA. After the election, they've never been called to it. But I'm wondering, internally within your party, how do you handle your issues?
We have a constitution, and we follow our party constitution very, very carefully and to the letter. We have the regular NEC meetings. And if we were to talk of either merger or cooperation in a different way, there are party structures that would all have to be engaged. All right. So what Boni Halwale was talking about was that initially there was a committee that was supposed to look into the mechanics of this process.
Okay.
But that committee does not make the decision. It can make a recommendation to the respective parties. And the party must then process those recommendations within the framework of their structures. And eventually, if they're going to make a very big decision, then you have to have your national delegates conference to be able to actualize the most weighty decisions.
Okay. We'll be looking at some graphics shortly, but as they prepare the graphics on the distribution of seats sorry, within NASA, I'd like to ask you the question about the noise that is being made by Ford Kenya right now, the noise about the share of the party funds. What's your view about it?
Well, I think there are quite a number of issues that can arise here. First of all, we have to remember that when we created NASA, in the NASA document, the coalition agreement, we also said that there shall be revenue sharing, because we understood that we are supporting our presidential candidate who belongs to the ODM party, but we are all part of a package in the form of a coalition. And therefore, his numbers, his victory, we will all have contributed to that victory in one way or the other.
Okay.
So it was within this framework that we then said there shall be a formula to be determined on how to share the revenue. That is one. The second thing is that since NASA as an entity has not been very active in terms of joint NASA activities, then the question is, if members continued donating, contributing funds to the NASA Secretariat, there has to be some form of accountability. What is the NASA Secretariat doing? And if resources are going there, who is drawing the resources? What is it for?
Okay.
So this is where the issue comes up, that the resources that were due to NASA maybe are better channeled to the individual political parties at this point in time. The third component, which is perhaps the most significant one, is this, my brother. We need to also figure out what is the value of a coalition agreement, and what will be the future of coalitions in Kenya. Because at the end of the day, there must be some ideological convergence. But after that convergence, there must be trust. There must be trust and confidence. So if we reach a stage where you are not willing to honor what you signed up to, then you must also then reflect and ask yourselves, what will somebody believe you can do if you'll abrogate agreements that you've signed up to? What does it portend? Not only for that agreement of NASA, but even in any other position. If people will believe that you have a tendency of abrogating
Or would they believe, for example, if you form government?
So will they believe you?
Okay.
So these are very fundamental issues.
I'd like you to look at the following graphics, because this is the distribution of party seats in Parliament from NASA. Do you have them? Waiting. All right. That's NASA elected leaders. ODM party has 73 members of Parliament, 20 senators and 13 governors. Wiper has 21 members of Parliament, 3 senators and 3 governors. NC, the third highest, is 13 members of Parliament and 3 senators, while Ford Kenya has 12 members of Parliament, 1 senator and 2 governors, right? So if you look at this and the distribution of party funding, it's only Wiper that qualifies for this. So unless it was captured expressly in your coalition document.
It was.
It was.
So
that's the source of the noise for Ford Kenya.
That is the source of the noise for
okay.
Ford Kenya. It
not,
was
not political
captured
partisan.
there.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's now understandable. That is. It is. All right. This is not the first time. I'm shifting gears. I'm heading close to you, to the issue of public debt. But this is not the first time that Musalia Mudavadi is remaining out, as I conclude on this other matter, that you're remaining out of government. 2002, immediately Kanu was defeated. You were offered a position of, you were nominated to Parliament.
Correct.
You declined it.
Yes.
In 2013?
2013, I was offered a cabinet position.
Position?
Yes.
You declined it?
Yes.
Why is this?
My friend, it was the logical thing to do. You see, if you're somebody who believes in democracy and you respect the electorate, you respect the people who vote you in. When I lost the seat in Sabatia in 2002, the people of Sabatia had spoken. They didn't want me in Parliament because they were unhappy with the stand I had taken at that time.
Okay. Everyone left, including Kamotho.
Yes, but they said they were unhappy with the stand I took, and the stand was that I supported Uhuru.
Uhuru Kenyatta in Kanu, yes.
Yeah. So they were unhappy at that time. Right?
So you wouldn't have accepted a nomination, and yet your people had refused.
So if the people had voted me out of Parliament, they had said that we don't want you in that house, I have to respect the will of the people. And in any case, what are nominated seats for? They're supposed to cater for special interests. So was I going to cater special interests for losers in the elections, or what would I have done?
But that's what happens in this country. They reward losers with ambassadorial positions, cabinet positions.
Well, the point I'm trying to put across here is that I think as we shape up in this country, we need to start looking at these ideals.
Okay.
All right? And in the context of the cabinet position that was there,
2013, after you reigned,
I stood by the same principle that if I was in the race and I did not win, all right, and this is nothing to do with what you would call a grand coalition government or anything like that, which would have come in through different circumstances. I simply said, and respectfully, that no, I don't think I should take it. And I stood my ground, the way I'm standing my ground now, that what is good, I will commend the government. But what is not good, I will have to speak out against it.
Okay. And that leads us to your current predicament. You're also saying, I am not going to work with Uhuru Kenyatta in his government right now.
I'm very clear. Once you enter government, and I have to repeat this, once you enter government, you're gagged. You're gagged. Your mouth is zipped.
And you really want to talk?
And I want to be able to talk. We cannot have a monolithic state. We cannot have a situation where we are all perceived to be reverting to a one-party regime. And speaking to this issue, I remember saying that there are a lot of NASA supporters out there who are keenly waiting and watching because their hopes were shattered. We must raise their hopes again.
Okay. And that's not all. It's also about the things that happened during that time. The hopes that people had, what happened during the election, the violence and all. Yeah, because A lot of people say if you cross on the other side, then you seem to agree with what would have happened. Does that also inform your choice?
You see, there are a lot of issues that inform my choice. I think, first of all, it's the logical position
That everyone ought to take
yes,
in your position.
This is the logical position. Now, the second thing that we have to look at is this. It's the institution of the IEBC, for instance. It has constantly been the source or the trigger for extremely violent incidents in our country. We have to deal with it. It has to be sorted out. And if the handshake is going to facilitate the addressing of the IEBC, then one would say that this is excellent, because then we have dealt with the elephant in the room, so that we can all respect the outcome of elections.
Okay.
Where the loser knows I have lost fairly, and where the winner knows I have won fairly.
That's what we should be addressing.
Yes.
Right, time for another break. We want to talk about public and national debt. You wrote an article that appeared today in the Daily Nation also on this. I'd like to come back with that, and let's take a look at some feedback, then we can... All right, I'm told there are no feedback, but a lot of you are speaking on social media. I'm seeing them will be retweeting. Some of them will be reading after the break, but keep them coming. Share with us your opinion. Join the conversation. Hashtag is sidebar. Make sure you tweet us, because we try and read them. But let's take a break. When we come back, I'd like to talk about what Musalia Mudavadi has also talking about. That's corruption and the public debt. Stay with us.
kuishi life ya mwana
Here, chance doesn't come knocking for you. You go knocking for it. Every day is our cup final, and the 90 minutes starts now. This is Chance, invented in Africa.
All right, welcome back to Sidebar. My guest tonight is Musalia Mudavadi, the Amani National Congress party leader. He's speaking to us about a lot of things. We've spoken about the politics of 2018, 2017, and now I'd like to talk about something else. Let's take a look at these graphics as we prepare to talk about the issues of public debt. And the graphics here, the national debt stands in 2008, and this is from your column. 2008, it was about 873.5 billion shillings. 10 years later, we are at 5.1 trillion, right? And the worrying trend, the worrying thing about this is Moody's we're reporting that they said that African countries, including Kenya, is in danger of being auctioned by the Chinese because of the debt. Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a very serious matter, to be honest. And I'll keep speaking to it so that we can, as a nation, get seized of the crisis and collectively start working on serious solutions towards dealing with this public debt. A country will always borrow, no doubt about that. But the parameters that come into play when you're borrowing are the issue. One, is the money being borrowed to be utilized appropriately, or is it being borrowed to be squandered? That is a fundamental question that we must always look at. And then you have to look at the term. Is it a commercial loan, or is it a concessionary loan? So these are fundamental issues that we must look at, and our ability to repay. So all these are very critical parameters. But the situation in Kenya now is that our public debt is close to 60% of our GDP. For an economy like ours, that is a very serious...
60%?
Yes, of GDP. The external debt is 2.6 billion, and the domestic debt is about 2.5 billion. The external debt is pegged in foreign currencies. I think 70% of it is dollar denominated. And then you have the other currencies. Now, if the shilling continues to slide, and we have seen that it's beginning to adjust to 102, maybe 103 in due course, then the debt, external debt, will start growing very rapidly. And it has serious implications. And we are also seeing a situation where the government is borrowing to refinance its debt. That is why they have already given an indication that they want to have another Eurobond.
You borrow to pay a loan?
Yes. So this is, it can become a serious, vicious cycle. And the consequences are devastating.
Okay.
You'll soon start chasing away investors. You'll make life unbearable. You'll make life too expensive in the country. And let me give you an example. The small and medium enterprises. Right now, the government has capped interest rates. Now, if you look at what is happening, people thought that this might help the small to medium scale, the mama mbogas of this world, the border people, and so forth. But what is happening? The banks are actually lending to the government. The government is taking up everything.
That's why our loans are expensive.
So the loans are becoming expensive. So we are trying all sorts of things to try and say, let us lower this. All these are translating into the expenses. If China's debt, and you've said it quite correctly, the Moody's,
yes, Moody's.
Has indicated, it says that out of the external loans, for instance, China's debt is about 70% of our external loan. Now, if you profile those loans, what is the repayment period? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? Is it 20 years? What is the interest rate? Is it going to be long-term loans where you can repay over 40 years or 50 years. Those are the kind of loans you get from the World Bank and institutions like the IMF. But once you go for commercial, the repayment maturity date of those loans is shorter. So the question we ask ourselves, that is one. And then, you know, on the dams, I think the government has again taken close to 260 billion to deal with these dams. Whether you're talking of Thuaka, where. Some of these dams are not even ready. And chances are the repayment process will start falling due. So this is a critical issue. Okay. Now, translate this to the corruption, then translate this to now go back to the maize farmer. You are able to pay the Mexican farmer, the imported maize, close to 4,000 shillings per bag. And you're telling the local farmer that you can only pay him
2,300.
2,300.
And yet the input was more than 3,000 shillings.
Now, at this point in time, the cost of fertilizer, if you are to bring it all the way to Eldoret under normal circumstances, cost and freight and so forth, the transportation, the margin for the dealers, you'd be selling maybe a bag of DAP for about 3,000 Kenya shillings. That is the farmer in Wasingishu, the farmer in Trans Nzoia and so forth. This is about the price that they're paying at this point in time. My friend, the government says they are subsidizing, they bring in a fertilizer and they say it's at 1,800 for the last 6 years. But do you know what has happened? The first 3 years, they locked out all other fertilizer dealers in this country. They dealt with one, given a monopoly over a 3-year period. They finished. The last 3.
To another person.
To another person. Again, a monopoly for 3 years. And we are talking of a country that should be competitive. But the irony of it all is that as they say they're bringing in subsidized fertilizer at a price of 1,800 and on the market it's at 3,000, then you find that the farmers cannot even access that fertilizer of 1,800. Middlemen or willy dealers take the same fertilizer and put it on their shelves.
And sell it for 3,000.
And sell it for 3,000. So here we are, the government saying it's subsidizing the farmers, when in fact they are subsidizing
businessmen and cartels.
Willy dealers and cartels.
As a
this has got to stop.
That's the solution I'm looking for, because you're a former finance minister. How would you deal with this problem? First, the borrowing in this country.
First of all, on the borrowing, I think I've tried to indicate a few things. First of all, deal with corruption, deal with wastage. These things must be dealt with, and there must be serious action so that you send a clear signal that you're dealing with this.
But as a finance minister, you will not be able to do that.
No.
Yes.
But it's the government.
Is it? Okay.
A finance ministry does not stand alone. It is a finance ministry of a government, of a nation. So there must be collaboration with the various agencies that deal with these kind of issues. So that would be something to deal with. The second thing that we must look at also is we must start preparing ourselves for rescheduling.
Of the loans?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Take it from me. It will happen.
So we have to go back and renegotiate about the payment period.
Some of these loans will have to be renegotiated. And the Treasury should set up its team to start profiling these loans and start figuring out which ones may become candidates for renegotiation. The third thing, we must look at the laws. And here, the amendments to the Public Finance Management Act diluted the role of Parliament when it comes to dealing with public borrowing, especially external public borrowing. because we are seeing a situation where Parliament is getting to know after the event in some of these cases.
Okay.
And I tried to get the sessional papers from Parliament to show out of these most recent commercial loans, which ones actually had their sessional papers tabled in Parliament and approved by Parliament before the executive appended its signature to those loans.
Did you find any?
I didn't get the documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't know if at all it happened.
Yes, so that
but
is...
should that not be a public document?
It should be a public document.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are things that we need to look at. They have produced the report and says this is the loan report, the annual report. The Treasury did table that. But certain critical details need to come out. And this is why I also went further in my commentaries to say that we need perhaps to create not just a debt management office, because they had created a debt management office in Treasury. They even interviewed an officer, but it took several months before that officer can be set up. Why were they taking so long if debt is such a crucial issue?
Okay.
To establish the office. So this is why I say that we may need to go a notch higher and legally create an authority that will have sufficient expertise and will have independence, similar to the Auditor General's independence,
okay,
to be able to interrogate loan propositions thoroughly before signatures are appended.
Okay. What do you think happened, went wrong with the PFM? Should it revert back to Parliament?
Yes, Parliament can look at it.
Okay.
Either the relevant committees must look at the PFM Act.
Yes.
And think seriously about making sure that no external loan, major external loan, will be signed up to
before going to Parliament.
Before Parliament knows thoroughly what is the purpose of that loan. Are the intended purpose, are they well defined, the purposes? Are they well defined? What is the ability of the government to repay the Kenyan people? Because it then translates into punitive taxation.
Okay.
And the shortcut, when the government wants to raise money, it goes for the soft spot. And what is the soft spot? Petroleum.
Like it did with the finance.
It goes to where it is easiest.
Okay.
Because if you try to go to other taxation areas, you find it difficult.
Ngumu.
But hiyo ya mafuta
ni rahisi sana.
Ni rahisi sana. Okay. And it starts hitting.
But there was a reason why it was taken to the Treasury. There was some mischief, right?
Which one?
The PFM. Because it's no longer handled by Parliament. Treasury exclusively does everything.
You see, Parliament should have that is the citizens' house. It represents the Kenyan body. Okay?
Yes.
Now, Parliament must have a say because that is where you have the sovereign guarantee. Okay?
Okay.
That is why broadly in international in the international arena, a serious lender will always ask, has this credit line that you seek, has it been approved by your Parliament?
Okay.
Because Parliament is the one that eventually gives the sovereign guarantee that the citizens of Kenya are prepared, if need be, to increase taxes, to do what? To settle this public debt.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we are out of time, but I'd like to ask you a few more questions about 2022 and your presidential ambition as we close. But first, we have a segment called The Toon Side. We bring the cartoon that...
By the way, the point I'm trying to say is that this fertilizer thing is another scandal.
In the offing?
Brewing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have been talking about some of these issues. You look at the health sector, you can see the grumbling that has started with county governments on the medical equipment, which they have to pay for. They never requisitioned it. They were never involved in in a needs assessment situation.
They were called and given.
But now they are paying huge loans, and they're beginning to grumble. Now, this is the danger, that if we start getting involved without including people in our discussions, in our planning and so forth, if we become arrogant and decide that they should not ask any questions, then we are going to drive the country on the edge.
Okay. All right. I see a question from Jacob Abera. I'd like to ask you that when we come back. But first, I'd like your reflection on this cartoon. I hope you can see it. That's the, would you be kind? That's the gender bill, and we have a lot of people. So the cartoonist is wondering, are they trying to resurrect the gender, to that gender rule, or they're trying to kill it altogether? The voting is coming up tomorrow. Your views on the gender bill?
At this point in time, I would only say that I wish it would go through, because as a constitutional requirement, we have not been able to deal with this issue. And I did meet the ladies, and I encouraged them, the ones who are pushing this, although they kept on pushing it as a ladies' issue. But the point I want to make is that we need to address it so that it does not keep on recurring. Now, if this fails, in the event that there's no quorum in Parliament and it fails, but I've told the ANC members of Parliament
to be in Parliament,
support the ladies of this country so that we can at least deal with this particular issue. If it fails, I think as a nation, through the referendum, we can start thinking about what have been success stories in other countries, say Norway, Sweden, and so forth, where the issue of gender has been dealt with, or even partially in South Africa, I think, have been dealt with quite effectively through the mixed member proportional system. Okay, we may want to do some research on it. I may not have all the facts with me now, but it is a window that can be looked at, and then within the context of the referendum, we may find a solution.
Okay.
Because at the same time, we also have the danger of coming up with piecemeal constitutional amendments, which can also be very difficult, and they can seriously distort the Constitution if we're not careful. So an all-inclusive dialogue process on critical areas will become necessary going forward.
All right. As we wind up, where you stand, you've declared your candidate for 2022. But I want to ask you, are you for, do you think you're the compromise candidate? You have been named the compromise candidate.
You know, sometimes I look at it and they say, when they say compromise candidate, it's very interesting in what context you put it, because who's compromise?
Kenyans, they'd rather go for you than...
You know, the Kenyan citizens will decide, isn't it?
Yes.
Through the vote, and I believe that is what they will do. I would rather view myself as the candidate rather than the compromise candidate.
Okay.
You see, compromise means that they would have preferred something
the other
else,
person, but
they have decided to compromise on you. You know, so within that context, I hesitate to use the word compromise candidate.
Okay.
I think Kenyans should be looking for the right candidate.
So you are an established candidate.
And I believe I am the right candidate.
Okay.
And Kenyans should vote for the right candidate, not for a compromise candidate.
Okay. You are a finance minister. The last two presidents have been finance ministers. Do you think the odds, based on that, are not against you?
Well, if both of them have gone through and succeeded, let's hope that trend does not stop with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it goes to the next finance minister. To be interesting. Yes, but the retired President Mwai Kibaki was a finance minister in this country.
Yes.
And President Uhuru Kenyatta was finance minister.
Right.
And now Musalia Mudavadi.
Yes, I was finance minister.
And you have declared, and you've mentioned also opposition leaders who have become president. So it just ties in with what you said.
Yeah, so if that's the formula, and if that looks like what Kenyans are looking out for,
yes,
then I'm telling them I'm here.
Okay. All right. Your closing remarks over everything we have said,
yes,
beginning with the politics of the day, you not taking up a position, and we've come to public debt, and now your candidate. Your closing remarks just in a minute.
Yes, I think I would like to just urge Kenyans that let's be united. Let's work as a Kenyan people. Let us move away from negative ethnicity. We all come from different communities, but let us move away from ethnic community, negative ethnic processes and politics, and be prepared to serve the Kenyans. Let us fight corruption, seriously.
Okay.
Let us fight corruption, and let us strengthen the institutions that deal with corruption, whether it is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, whether it is the DPP's office, the DCI, the police, the judiciary. Let us deal with these institutions appropriately, give them the necessary resources. Parliament must play its role so that they can function. And a classic example is the judiciary. You know, when you see the debate that is between the DPP's office and the judiciary as an example, I don't know how much time I have, but when you look at it, these are expressions of frustration, okay, in this cycle against corruption. They're expressions of frustration. Now, we must ask ourselves, who is the biggest culprit in frustrating this effort? Because if, for instance, the judiciary, in best practices, they're supposed to have 2.5% of a national budget in an ideal situation, we are giving our judiciary 0.9% of our national budget. Today, we have about 150 judges in Kenya and about 500 magistrates. If you interpolate this with our population, you'll find that you're having one judge for 300,000 people and one magistrate for 115,000 Kenyans. Now, if you go to other jurisdictions, you find in a situation like the US, you have roughly about 102 judges for 1 million citizens. All right? In Kenya, you're having 3 judges for 1 million citizens.
It's practically headache.
And then, remember, they are manual. So we have to invest in resources for them to broaden their capacity in terms of the people actually dispensing justice, and also give them the resources to bring in technology, because our judicial processes are still largely manual. Now, the DPP's office was also underfunded. In the last budget, they were given only 3.6 billion. Compare that with what Parliament took for itself. EACC was also underfunded. So these are signals that tend to show that perhaps we need to do more on the fight against corruption.
Okay.
So to me, these are the areas that we can focus on and then work seriously to create jobs for our young people.
All right.
There's about 8 million young people out there and they don't have jobs. Some of them are being told to go and start your enterprises. We are giving you 30% of the tenders in a given area. But what is really happening behind the scenes? That's the affirmative action for women and youth. What is really happening? A few fellows in public office are registering
firms on behalf of the youth.
On behalf of the youth.
Yes.
Somebody having 50 companies, another 100, another 30, and so forth. And they're bidding and squeezing out this youth.
Okay. So
basically battering
back to them through the back door.
So it is corruption that must be dealt with.
Thank you very much. Musalia Mudavadi, the Amani National Congress Party leader. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And before we leave, let's take a look at some feedback. We have about 3 of them from DJ Darixo. The most sound mind focused leader Kenya misses for it to realize its vision and build a sustainable future for our kids. At Musalia Mudavadi, most sober man, President 2022, I will die with you on the ballot, sir. That's a supporter right there. He likes what you say. Carrington Mwenda says Musalia Mudavadi is a sober leader that needs to take up the leadership of this country and save us from the burden of public debts that is growing out of control. He did a good job when he was a finance minister. And Luo legend, Musalia Mudavadi is such a role model, a great leader and motivator for all to do good deeds and to contribute to this nation. He has a positive influence to all things he does. Give us such positive feelings and hope for a better tomorrow. Basically, they are positives. We had a lot of questions. For example, there's a gentleman who asked about your thoughts about Gulana Kulalo, for example, and what happened with that irrigation scheme. But I guess we don't have time to answer that. But we'll have another time with you. We'll have another time to talk about that. And finally, Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi became a member of parliament for Sabatia at the age of 29. That's about 28 years ago, following the death of his father, that's Moses Mudavadi, who died on the 7th of February 1989, were serving as the Minister for Local Government and Physical Planning. Now, elders in his backyard, that's Maragoli, his birthplace, endorsed him to succeed his father. Musalia was then a quantity surveyor and a land economist from Nairobi University graduate, and nearly all locations in Sabatia at that time issued statements endorsing him. But it was not a walk in the park for the young Mudavadi then. One Hezekiah Muteri Kisia, who served as a civic leader, that's a councillor, right, for the Kigama Mudete ward, located deep inside Sabatia, rejected that proposal, the endorsement to run for MP at a press conference that he convened in Kakamega town. He preferred instead a former member of parliament for Vihiga, Peter Kibisu, who he described as the right man to fill in the senior Mudavadi's shoes. Now, the other names including Andrew Ligale, then a nominated member of parliament, and Musalia's own uncle, Justice Mudavadi. They also wanted that position. And as they say, the rest is history. Musalia Mudavadi went on to serve the people of Sabatia for 2 decades and also served in the government as Minister for Finance, Vice President, Deputy Prime Minister. And of course, that's a good place to end our discussion tonight. Thank you for watching and thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And we'll have another opportunity to talk about all your thoughts and if they're development. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right, and have a good night. We'll be back right here on Tuesday next week. But on Monday, I'll be back with AM Live with a discussion, political discussion. Have a good night.